Hello, Cynthia here. Welcome back to my quilt lab. I'm working on month 6 of the Illusion sampler pattern. That's this guy right here. And just to review, this is a block of the month sponsored by Banyan Batiks of Northcott with Scott A. Flanagan. He is our quilt designer. And if you haven't looked at my previous months, go back and look at it. The picture that you see here, that's the original block of the month, but I'm doing a scrappy version and having fun with this pattern. It's lots of fun. So let's dig in and see what month 6 has to offer. All right, just to reiterate, I am not saying sizes and shapes and stuff like that because I don't want to break the copyright. I really hope Scott's going to release this pattern to the public once the block of the month is over. Fingers crossed. Go and follow him on social media and let him know how awesome you think this pattern is. But until then, let me tell you what month 6 has to offer us. You can see we're using all 4 of the backgrounds, 1, 2, 3, 4, but only 8 of the 9 different colors of fabric. I think this is the first month we're not using all 9 colors of fabric, and we're going to need some fusible web. That's right, we got more applique in our future with this month. Let's dig into that first section, which is the main block. Here we go. All right, so in the cutting directions for the main block, you can see we're using some background 1, got a couple of different sizes of squares. Background 4, got that in squares. 2, 3, 5, and 7 fabrics are having a couple of squares and a couple of rectangles, and fabric 1 is having several rectangles. So what are we doing with this? Well, if you remember from that block, we're going to be doing some half square triangles and some flying geese. Let me just bring that picture in one more time. Right there he is. So you can see we're going to have a lot of fun with this pattern. And the key to this block is going to be color placement and making sure we're matching up the right pieces with the right colors. Let's get started though. All right, so the first part of this block is making some half square triangles from our background number 1 fabric and a background number 4 fabric. And we're doing a little differently than we have in the past. We're actually making 2 half square triangles from the 1 square. So I like to recommend this little guy. He is a 1/4 square ruler with the dashed line in the center. Let me show you how much I love this. There's several different types out here, and I like this guy because he has that dashed line down the center. So what I'm going to do is we're going to put that right on the diagonal. And you can take your chalk pencil, I'm just using a lead pencil, your fabric pen, whatever you're comfortable with, and I'm going to draw that dashed line, and then I'm going to do a line on either side of that ruler too. All right, so as you can see there's that dashed line in the center and a line on either side. Now in the directions it says just to draw the dashed line in the center. I like to do all 3 because it gives me kind of a reference point, because when we take this to the machine, we're going to pair that up with the background number 4, is we're going to stitch on those 2 solid lines. That's a 1/4 inch seam away from that middle seam. So if you want to, you only have to put that middle line there. Just use your 1/4 inch foot to make sure that you're doing a seam on either side of that center diagonal line. Once these are seamed, we're going to take our rulers, we're going to come back here, and we're going to slice down the middle so that this 2 little pieces, 2 little squares will make 2 half square triangles. We're going to do that twice. So let me take this to the machine and I'll be right back. Alright, so let's talk about the rest of the fabric now that we're finished with those half square triangles. We'll just set those aside until we're ready to piece this block together. We have a bunch of the background 1 squares. You're going to need to grab 16 of them and put a line diagonally because these are going to be paired up with these color rectangles, and the yellow ones are going to be paired up with the different colors of squares. We're going to be making flying geese. So once you have all of your squares with that diagonal, you're going to be pairing them up with each of those rectangles. We've done this before. We're going to do this seam right here, and then afterwards we're going to trim away and come back and do the other side. So let me do one of these on camera and then I'll be right back. Okay, you can see I have my drawn line diagonally on my 2 background squares, and this is what they're showing. They're showing the orange one in the book, so I'll keep it with the book. I'm going to put this on top on the left hand side. I'm going to take this to the machine really quickly and I'm going to stitch right on top of that drawn line, and I'll come back and we'll cut away and press. Be back in just a second. Alright, there's that first side done. So now I can do the exact same thing, only on the other side with the other square. Line that up. I'll stitch that and I'll be right back. Alright, and that second half is done, so I can trim away the extra. And just like on the first half, we're going to line that dashed line, that 1/4 of an inch, right on top of that seam. Cut away the extra. And then we'll press it open. And there we go. And we just got to do that 7 more times with the other colors with the background. But before we can move on, we have to make flying geese with those yellow rectangles as well. And it's the same process. We'll be drawing that diagonal line, sewing the one side, cutting away the extra, pressing them open, and then doing the other side the same way. So that way we'll have 8 with 2 orange, 2 red, 2 turquoise, 2 blue big triangles, and then 4 big triangles of the yellow with the opposite wings. All right, let's get going. We got some flying geese to take care of. So once you're finished with the flying geese, we're going to divvy up the colors into 4 quadrants. And the picture actually shows the orange, so that's what I'm going to do for you today. So we have the 3 flying geese, 2 of them with the orange as the main block and 1 with the yellow as the main block. You'll need 1 of the half square triangles and 2 of those extra background squares. And it's really important to follow the picture because you'll see a pattern that'll emerge when we put everything together. So it looks a little something like this. So this is the shape that we're looking for. It's kind of this arrow created from the different flying geese. And we're going to do this with all 4 of the colors. The 2 background pieces, you'll see you want to make sure you have the angle this way because this is going to make a pinwheel with the 4 of them right in the center of that block. So make sure that this is in the correct position as well. So we're going to do some piecing. We're going to piece these 2 pieces together. We're going to press up. We're going to do these 2 pieces together. We're going to press towards that flying geese. The 2 flying geese blocks we're going to put together and we're going to press towards that main background one. And then we're going to have 3 different blocks. The next step is to put these 2 pieces together, and we press away from the flying geese, and then it's just a matter of putting the top and the bottom together, and we'll be pressing down. So let me take this to the machine, and I'll take little pictures as I go, and I'll meet you at the other end. Alright, so there's the finished block, and I will mention that I did one change. This seam right here is supposed to be pressed down, and let me turn it over. I actually opened the seam up because this is kind of a bulky area, and it just seemed to lay a little flatter if I opened it up. That's just something that I did. Feel free to follow the directions as they stand. They're great directions. Love Scott's directions. That was just a personal preference. So do this 3 more times in red, teal, and blue, and you'll have your 4 quadrants ready. So now let's place those in their order. All right, there's the order. Teal, orange, blue, red. And now we're going to put these together in the final layout. So we're going to sew these 2 and these 2 together. We're going to be pressing kind of counterclockwise so that this will nest up nicely in the middle. And then we'll be able to do the top to the bottom, and that'll be a nice nesting, and it's going to be pressed up. So let's go to the machine and I'll meet you at the end. All right, and there is the final block. Pretty little pinwheel in the center, lovely little corners. Very fun. Give this guy a nice best press or starch, or at least a good pressing. Set it aside and let's move on to those accent strips. All right, accent strips. You'll have a stack of squares of varying sizes and a stack of rectangles. These squares are going to be for an applique accent strip coming up. But first, let's talk about the rectangles. I do want to point out that right now in the instructions there is a typo. It says background 2, but actually it's background 3. So I just want to clear that up, and hopefully that gets fixed in a future publication. So we're going to take our background 3 rectangles and our assorted different colors of rectangles, and we're going to pair them up, one with each. So go ahead and match all these together, give them a stitch so that we'll have squares of 2 halves of colors, and I'll be back in just a moment. All right, so I have everything paired off, and all the pressing goes up to those different colors. So now we just need to do the layout. The orange one's going to be a singular square all by its lonesome, but the other 4 will get pieced together in the accent strip. And because everything's pressed towards those colors, all these seams should nest up really nicely when you go to sew them together. So we're going to sew all these together, and we're going to press everything towards the right, and I'll be back in just a moment. All right, there is accent strip number 1. Now we're going to grab the squares for the second accent strip, give these a press and set them aside. And there are 2 different sizes of squares. The big one is going to be the background, And these smaller squares, we're going to actually take some fusible web and draw triangles on them. We're just going to copy from the picture that's in the instructions, and those are going to be fused on top of the bigger squares. So let me grab my fusible and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've traced the triangles onto pieces of my fusible web, and I'm using the Lite Easy Steam-A-Seam 2, and I'll put a little link of that in the description below. And I've made the little pieces a little bigger than my my drawn triangle. And that's okay because my squares should be big enough to accommodate that. So I'm going to put them on each of these smaller squares. Remember, the smaller squares will get the triangle fusible. And then I'll cut them out and we'll put them on top of the big pieces of squares. So let me do that and I'll be right back. All right, so I've adhered the applique part to the backs of all of these. So now I just need to trim away, and be sure you follow the instructions for whatever fusible web you use. These require just a quick press, and then once I cut everything away, I can peel away this paper and adhere them with another quick press to my different squares. So let's cut up some triangles. Now we're ready to place triangles on squares. So I'm just going to set these out. If you look at the instructions, it'll show that the triangles are all kind of cattywampus. They're all sorts of mixed up and put on in different areas of the square. So there's no really clear instructions other than applique the triangles on, move them around, you know, randomly turn them, I think is the words that it uses. So yeah, feel free to kind of place them in whatever kind of, you know, order you want to. Or it's your quilt, you can absolutely all face them the same way. So let's kind of put them in the order that it shows. First it's yellow, then teal, then blue, then purple. And so the order goes yellow, teal, blue, purple, red, orange. And I'm just putting these here so that I can kind of see what they're gonna look like. So yeah, go crazy, guys. Put them in whatever order you want to. Place them however looks good to you. And just make sure that the edges of the triangle are at least 1/4 of an inch away. That way you don't clip them off when we put the squares together. And the nice thing about the product that I'm using, the Steam-A-Seam 2 Lite, is here, I'll peel one of these off, is that it's a little tacky, but not so tacky that if I put it on the square and want to remove it and replace it in a different way, I can still do that. So that's kind of a nice reason why I like to use this product. And let's put it this way for this guy. So I'm going to play around with these, put them in a kind of a random order or a random placement, just like the directions say. I'm going to give them a press so that they'll be permanently adhered to these squares. And then we'll talk about putting them together. I'll see you in a moment. All right, so I've fused all the applique triangles onto the squares. And before I move on to seam these together into the accent strip, we need to do the applique stitch. And just like before in previous months with the circle or the drunkard's path. Feel free to pick any stitch that you're interested in. Zigzag, blanket, satin, if you have something fun. I'm going to stick with a blanket stitch, and just like previously, I'm going to pick a background color, one of the background fabric, so that kind of peachy pink. That's the thread color that I'll be using. But feel free to, you know, pick a color for each square that matches, a red for the red, or orange for orange, or, you know, you could do a monofilament so you don't see any color, or pick something completely different, like a nice black to go around the edges. That would certainly, you know, differentiate the two colors and make everything pop. But it's up to you, you know, it's your quilt, and this is my Scrappy quilt, so I'm going to do this background color. So let me go do the blanket stitch, and I like to do a 3.0, 3.0, both width and length, because I like my stitch just a little bit bigger. And I will see you back in just a moment. All right, I've done the blanket stitch around all of the triangles, so now we put this guy together. So I'm going to do all the seams, and I'm going to press everything to the right, except for that last one. Don't forget, it needs to go to the left because it's going to nest up with a piece at the very end. So let me do this. We'll be finished with our second accent strip, and I'll be back in just a moment. All right, and there's the accent strip. Let me just flip her over so you can see all going one way except for that last one. All right, so this means our second accent strip is done. Let's grab all of those pieces and put this puppy together. All right, make sure you cut your background in 2 pieces for all of the sashing and stuff for the block. Let's put this guy together. If you've watched any of the previous videos, this should seem pretty familiar to you. That big guy goes up in that top right corner. We got the 2 sashes. The one we just finished is down here along the edge. The little lonesome guy goes down at the bottom. This follows up the side. And of course we have the sashing to go around that big block. One on either side. Bottom and the top. Lonesome little square in the corner, and the 2 big pieces flanking those accent strips. All right. Just like normal, let's put this guy together. First is sashing that main block. 2 sides, press away from the block. Top and bottom, press away from the block, so that big block is now sashed. Move to the right into this accent strip and attach the background to it. Press towards that background. So now the left side is done, the right side is done. Let's put that seam down the middle, and we're going to press towards that big block. Top is finished. Let's move to the bottom. To that bottom row, we're going to put the backgrounds on either side of that lonesome little rail fence. Press towards the background so that that bottom row is done. Attach it to that lovely triangle applique accent strip and press down. So now the top is finished. The bottom is finished. Just that one seam there to do. And once you do that one, press up towards the top, and bam, that guy will be done. So let's take this to the machine, and I'll see you at the end. There she is, all done, pressed, looking pretty, looking snazzy. This is month 6 That means we are halfway through the Illusion Sampler block of the month. I hope you've been enjoying my little extravaganza, my adventure through this process, and I can't wait to see what the other half of the year is going to look like. Let's just flip the block over so you can take a look at the back. I always like to show the back as well. Ugh, so much fun. Hey guys, if you've been enjoying this, please give me the old thumbs up, subscribe so you can see how the next half of the year will go. And hey, tag me on social media, #MyQuiltLab. If you're doing this process as well, I would love to see how your blocks are going, and leave me a comment below. I love reading them and I'm having such a good time. I hope you guys are too. We'll see you next time in month number 7, that's July. We'll see you later. Thanks for dropping by my Quilt Lab. Bye-bye.